Yes. So now this is going to appear on LinkedIn. Okay, so we hit the time. Kevin, how is the sound?
The sound is good.
Yeah.
The sound is good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's.
Do you want me to test sharing my screen to see if it works on your side?
No. Yes, please.
Let me know if.
Yes, excellent.
Does that work?
Yeah, it
for
worked
you?
perfect. Yeah, it works perfect.
Okay.
Yes, excellent. So it's my pleasure today to introduce you Florian Bagia. Florian was a former student of mine, and now I consider him a colleague as well. We met back in the year 2012, 2013 in Barcelona, when I was teaching some financial courses in one of the university's business schools that I work with in that city, and looking for somebody that can enlighten us in this world of e-commerce and media activation for online stores or e-commerce companies. I found him in my network of contacts, and I asked him if he could give us some insights about what he does, how he does, and we came to the topic of D2C digital acquisition. Actually, just by talking to him a couple of weeks ago, organizing the date and the time that he could come and be with us, I learned a lot just in just these 10, 15 minutes that we have that small chat. So thank you, Florian, for being with us today. And I hope our students get the best out of your insights in this world of e-commerce.
No, thank you, but thank you. Well, thank you for welcoming me first of all, and nice meeting you all remotely, but perhaps one day physically. So super excited to hopefully give you a glimpse of the topic of acquisition, mostly paid acquisition, but we cover other aspects. So I have a couple of slides which I think will be enough for introduction, let's say. It's not going to go into in-depth of the topic, but hopefully it will be useful for your bootcamp and projects that you're working on at the minute. And then I think we've got time at the end for eventually question and answers as well. So let's make it informal as well. If you've got any question along the way, feel free to stop me. What I can perhaps do as well is a quick introduction of myself and the company I work for. So hopefully that also gives you a little bit more context. So I'm Florian, as Hubert mentioned, we met a long time ago in the academic world in Barcelona. Since then, I've worked in England, in London for the media agency world predominantly. I've worked for the WPP Group, Omnicom Group on different verticals, such as retail, fintech, travel, so different kind of client, different kind of challenges. And 5 years ago, I moved back to France to work for a French manufacturing group, which is specialized in what we call small domestic appliances. So it's basically any products that you will use at home to cook or to get your home tidy. So for example, anything from coffee machines to vacuum cleaners. Our sort of main competitors, to give you an idea, are Philips, Dyson, iRobot, these sort of companies. And I work predominantly on what we call digital acquisition for D2C and B2B2C. So B2B2C is our historical DNA. So we work a lot with retailers. So For example, with Argos and Curry in the UK, Carrefour and Darty in France, Corte Inglés in Spain. So this is our original way of selling. And since 2 and 3 years ago, the group has taken an additional direction, which is to sell directly to the consumer. A lot like what most e-commerce brands are doing today. The idea behind that is that we want to be closer to the consumer. We want to have less intermediation. We want to be able to personalize the offer and the communication that we do with them. And as part of that, for example, CRM is an important channel that we are developing internally, particularly as it's getting more and more competitive out there. So what I do is I'll dive in terms of context for us. You'll see it might be similar to you if you plan to launch any D2C store in the future. But for us, it's definitely a must-have with the growth of the channel and the evolution of consumer expectation. What we notice is three things on our end is there's a competition for the access to the consumer. There's definitely, the GAFAs, which are the dominant today. There's probably more and more of us which have less time for brands, so our attention time is less and less important. So for us, it's super important to engage directly with the consumer. We've also got an increased pressure from the retailers on our side. So there's a retail consolidation, there's a pressure on product margin, for instance, and this creates value erosion for most of companies like ours, where we need to continue to grow, but our margin are diminishing year on year. So how can we manage this on the long term? It's a very strategical reflection that I think most companies are asking themselves. Not to be too reliant on promotions, on retailers. So that's the overall idea. And then there's new models also being disruptive, like digital native brands, which are on our categories. It's pretty much insane. We see sometimes newcomers, for example, like the ones that do tomorrow, perhaps, on certain products, which in less than 6 months are taking 20% of our market share. Because they are super active online, they manage to create a community very quickly, they do guerrilla marketing, and they can sort of find an audience very quickly. So these were the three main things that brought us to D2C on our side. And there's 5 other aspects. The first one, and you're probably going to hear about it a lot, is the first-party data, which is becoming more and more important for businesses. So it's how do you collect information about the consumer, and how can you interact with them directly by creating loyalty. So after they bought, for instance, how can you make sure that you continue to keep a communication rhythm with them, to propose new offers, which could be relevant to the initial product they bought. How do you build that brand equity and influence the lifetime value over time? So this is for us something that definitely needs to be developed and that we are working hard on. It's also super important to anticipate the trends, to propose targeted recommendation and well-crafted content. As any e-commerce website, for us, we are learning. So we have D2C websites today. You can check, for example, www.rodenta.fr. That's an example of D2C website we've got today. We are far from a perfect e-commerce execution, but we are getting there. We're learning on the go around creating best product page, making sure the loading time of our website is as fast as possible, proposing payment installments, for example. So it's you learn as you go. That's what I would say. Even for a group like us, there's 30,000 people in my group, and D2C is still a very new topic, and we are learning as we go. It's also super important to maintain, I think, a good balance between what we would invest on our side between what we call branding and performance. So, for example, we invest on TV, on social networks, but we also invest on channels which are very ROI driven. For example, paid search, Amazon advertising, and the balance of the two is super important for a large brand. And then customer acquisition, there's different way to look at it, but there's priority level, let's say. So if you launch a new brand, in my opinion, what's very important is to focus, for example, on SEO, as well as having test budget on very ROI-driven channels like paid search and paid social. And then once you sufficiently saturated these areas, then you can consider going into other areas. One thing I want to stop upon, because it's often neglected, I think, and also it's one of the, let's say, learning stories we've had. Now we are 3 years into D2C, is that to create a meaningful relationship, you need to be super clear on how different you are from the others. What's the reason that makes the consumer to buy directly from you? Is it easiness to buy, the exclusivity that product won't be available within the retailer? Is it price? Price won't be sufficient, most probably. Is it the brand affinity that you need to work on? What we know is consumers want more and more is rewards, exclusivity, personalized recommendation based on what they vote, and inspiration. It's not easy, but it is definitely aspects that are key. And other aspects is that the shopping journey, I think, has never been more complex than it is today. For example, for us today, we are trying to assess to which extent an advertising campaign on digital can influence someone to go in store. Because we know that on some categories which are very advanced technologically, for example, we sell pressure cooker which are above 1,000 euros of price point, so that can make your life easier if you've got a family. On these categories, we know that, for instance, the buying time is more than 6 months. So people will check online, go check reviews, price points on Amazon, and then they most likely will go in store to touch the product or get a demo. So it's also very important for us to link the dots between online and offline, and between the different channels as well. So four key learnings for us so far on D2C is that it's a challenge to manage the complexity of the consumer journey between our brand.com and our e-retail platforms. For example, today we're trying to work with Amazon on assessing to which extent people which go on our D2C website are also checking an Amazon brand store page, which one are prefer to buy from Amazon because that's the preferred choice, and which one, for example, prefer to buy from our D2C because they see a brand affinity and they do not want to buy from Amazon for other reasons. It's also super important to be business driven. So what is your sales target? How many units do you want to sell? At which price point? This is going to be what will define your strategy and, for example, your acquisition strategy. There's a third aspect, which is monitoring the campaign profitability very regularly, if not daily. For us, it was a change in mindset because we were used to buying digital in a very classic way. You know, you buy a social campaign, you check 1 month later if it has performed. This doesn't work in an e-commerce environment today. You need to be very business-driven and check the performance every day, whether that's with a partner or whether you do it internally with your own hands. So, for example, for us, on moments like Black Friday, we would optimize our campaign up to 10 times per day because you need to react on the hour, if not the minute. And this is where AI and machine learning comes into play. So yeah, compatibility is super important. And then finally, consumer value. So how do you collect user data to increase the value of each transaction over the long term? And this is where CRM, for example, comes into play. This is an example of today how the different channels are intertwined. And for example, we mostly activate all of these with different budgets, but this gives you, in our view, the way we split it. So we always start from the consumer, and then we try to see how he evolves from attention, consideration, and the purchase phase, and then after loyalty, which is where we try to create advocacy. And here, each channel has a role, so that's very important. It's sometimes difficult to assess the role of, I don't know, a YouTube campaign you could be doing but we know it has an influence in an assisted way to the purchase, for instance. So obviously, if you're a small business, if you start, that's not where you want to go first. But for example, we'll see later, the logic we've taken at Bruxelles, although we're a big company, was to first focus on purchase, then expand onto consideration, and then into attention. Because we're playing against big players and we have a lot of category to sustain, so you need to have priorities as well. So this might be a bit basic for you. I don't know to which extent you're exposed to that, but on our side, we always start from the business objective. So as I mentioned, what's the volume of sale you want to make in the next 6 months? What's the audience potential that you have on the different acquisition channel? What's your average conversion rate? So for the sales volume, what we try to do is the actual website conversion rate, the volume of traffic, and the average order value. And that gives us for us a sales volume we want to achieve. And then we know that if we got a sales target of X, we're going to need X amount of traffic, and then we're going to try to adjust and calibrate the mix depending on the traffic that we think we can achieve by the channel. And then this also helps us to have the cost constraint, which would be how much we are willing to pay for a purchase. So for us, we look at, for example, cost per acquisition or return on ad spend or cost of sale. These are the sort of, for example, metric we use. So we say on a certain category, we do not want to go above 15% cost of sale because we know that after that, we are losing money in terms of profitability. So that's a way of looking at it. You could do it as well as, I'm willing to pay up to 50 euros to acquire a sale, but not go above because of X, Y, and Z, because of shipping, because of supply chain costs, etc. So if we step back a little bit, this is today what you activate. You can activate in an activation strategy. You have 3 aspects. You've got the paid media areas. You've got what's owned media and what is earned. So paid media would be anything from paid search, so advertising on Google, Bing, Yandex, you name it. Doing display advertising, which works very well usually on awareness and consideration, which are like a sort of banners you could see on generic media websites. But you could also consider it as retargeting. One of the big players of the space is Criteo, for instance, which is very effective at doing that. There's paid social, which can fit the free area of the chat of the consumer journey, attention, consideration, purchase. So any meta ads that you could be running or TikTok more recently, these are good examples. There's retail media, which is an interesting one for me because it's when I started working in advertising, it was almost zero company investing or knowing what to do on retail media. Even agencies today do not have a dedicated department, but it's one of the fastest growing advertising channels today in Europe and even in the US. So the US service survey that is in the EMEA for the next 2 years. Retail media, so it's advertising on Amazon, for instance, or with marketplaces, it's what people buy 7 times more quickly than all the rest of the digital advertising. The key reason behind that is that, as you know, it's going to be more difficult to navigate in the digital world with cookies disappearing. So retail media is one of the easy solutions for a lot of advertisers and companies to work with the data that pure players or marketplaces are providing. And Amazon today is a huge player in that space.
I think you gave us a lot of content and information because I'm sorry I interrupt you. I shouldn't.
Yeah, shouldn't.
But then you don't feel alone for the experience that you have in this world of customer acquisition. Just give me a little minute because there is a truck in the street making a lot of noise. But in terms of meta ads that you just commented, and I am illiterate in digital marketing, why these meta ads are so important?
I would say they're very important for a few reasons. The first thing is the capabilities that Meta or Google are offering. They're bloody huge. So as in, there's a consumer audience pool today on Meta or Google, which is extremely broad, but that can also be very precise. So what's interesting is for any business, you do not need to be a big conglomerate like us in order to do very precise targeting that could work very effectively. From my experience, I've worked also for small companies, and there's a way today, there's a lot of use case or targeting settings that you can do that are very qualitative without spending too much money. So you could be, I'm thinking about lookalike audiences you could create, even having small, CRM list of very loyal customers that you could upload in Meta, and then Meta could propose you very similar profile to the one you've got. The retargeting capabilities are also very strong still. So I would say Meta, almost a no-brainer in any acquisition strategy, whether you're a small or big player.
Okay.
And they are moving very fast as well, so they follow also the
I have two questions connected to that Meta strategy. One is, what will be the budget, yes, to implement a Meta strategy? This is one, and the second one is, what will be the social media campaign or the combination of the different tools in relation to bootstrap in a new venture, in a new company?
So again, the second question,
the second question is to bootstrapping. How can we use actions that can make us save money using different tools to acquire customers using different channels of social media?
Right. So there's two things on the second part, which is the effectiveness. What we do, at least on Group Sector, what we are starting to do is to systematically, for example, if you launch any product, sometimes, I think you've all got the case where you were checking out a product online, you bought it offline, for instance, but you're still receiving shitloads of ads online. And you're like, dude, like, I've got this product already, like, this is pointless. So there's, for example, when we're doing systematic efforts on any new product launch or prospective campaigns, is we exclude previous buyers from this campaign. So that, for example, is a good case of avoiding targeting people who recently bought a product in the last 12 months. In the same way, you could also say, look, I'm launching a brand new version of a product which was 2 or 3 years old or obsolete. We think there could be, our previous buyer would be very interested to see the new upgrade. So there could be also a way to target those previous buyers and to feature and showcase the new feature of the product as well. I believe that answers the question. Or?
Yes, that's it.
Partly.
And what about a budget, let's say in France, for a small company? How much will be, if they do it correctly, right? If they think thoroughly about their campaign and their objective, how much will be a budget, for instance, for a small company to invest in customer acquisition?
I would say that if you want to get serious about it, probably a few thousand. You could start with a few thousand.
Okay. Split it all over 3 months, 6 months, a year, or just in one campaign?
So it's a good point. I think what is important is to spread it evenly. As in, what's key today is to be visible, always on.
Okay.
So it's more interesting for you to probably be more always on for 6 months on a more niche audience and pool of consumers, rather than going broad for 2 weeks on a large pool of audience. Okay. In my experience, whether you're small or big business.
Okay.
Because repetition matters, because also people take time to buy products. It's not. I think there's really few people which go on the website for the first time and buy instantly. Usually, what happens is they purchase journey will take several days. It depends again on the product and the companies, but for us, for example, we sell pans for cooking. The average purchase time is a couple of days. For certain products, it's several months.
Yeah.
So this is also something that it will be interesting for you to assess depending on the product you launch in your local shop, Shopify. But this is to be taken into consideration.
Okay.
And yeah, the budget again it very much depends on which consumer you're looking for. But you can start off with a couple of hundreds, and I say a few thousand would be easier.
Thank you very much. Yes, you can continue. Sorry for interrupting.
No props. The other aspects, which are also I think quick wins if you're a small business, is CRM, because CRM's got literally no cost almost. It is probably the most effective channel. You're not going to get the same reach as on Meta, but you will get almost no cost because it's just the cost of writing an email, and the technology for sending an email are usually quite cheap. So you can end up having really decent purchase online and very little setup cost. So this is a very interesting one to investigate very early on in the same way for SEO. And then you've got what we call earn on our side. So that would be, for example, influence marketing. This is very popular with any product which is targeting youngsters. For example, this on our side on any food-related brands, super effective. Again, it trends need to be followed because it's trending very quickly. So here I've tried to put in a nutshell today what we activate on our side, and I'll try to give you what, in my opinion, would be essential to get started with. So there's paid social, we discussed it, there's display advertising, there's paid search, affiliation, and retail media. These are today the most classic channels of an acquisition strategy. Again, the way it has to be adapted based on your product, your category, your competition, but there are probably some no-brainers and some are not freeze, and these are, in my opinion, for example, anything to paid search, paid social, having some retargeting across display advertising, for example. And then if you are working with retailers, retail media is also a must do. But if you're only D2C, then probably stick to the previous ones. And then when it comes to the own and earned channel, SEO and CRM are, in my opinion, the most cost-effective channels to focus on first. SEO takes a little bit more time on the setup side, because it has some technical aspects, some content areas, but on the long run, it will be your number one source of traffic. For example, to give you an idea, today for us, most of our brands, SEO accounts pretty much for, I would say, 40% of our traffic. And then on brands which are very low branded awareness, for example, we've got some love brands because they're strong in France and in other markets, but we've also got brands that we bought through acquisition, and these are not very well known in some markets. This is the case of Proventa, for instance, and on this we need to sustain a high level of investment on media, on paid, because we need to build the awareness first, and then reduce the advertising afterwards once the awareness is out there.
So this is the previous slide is like the core business of the, let's say, the paid media, like yeah. One remark from our audience, they say that if you can play the display a little bit bigger, if you go to display settings,
sure.
Maybe then just full screen. I think it's.
Is it better now?
Yes, excellent. Now full screen. Thank you.
And then perhaps the recommendation I can give you here, it's going to go in a little bit more details, but if you're limited on budget, which we all are, is to first focus on what we would call the purchase phase of the consumer funnel. So it's basically any lower funnel audiences, so people which already have shown a very appetite for your product or category. This is the first priority to go for. There will be less people, but they will be very keen to buy from you. So this should be the prioritized shoppers. And this is where you will have the highest conversion rate and ROI. So this is typically retargeting, for example, all your visitors of your website, perhaps visitors of certain categories of your online shop. So for example, people which went up to the last stage but didn't buy from you. You could also cluster them by categories. So personalize a retargeting campaign, I don't know, for a organic product versus another product you're selling on the shop. And then once you've sufficiently saturated this area, this is where you can consider expanding to what we would call on our side consideration. So it's any similar profile or what we would call high intentionist. So these are shoppers which they're interested in the categories of the products you're selling, but they don't know you yet. So this is where you could typically use the guerrilla tactics that also competitor bidding. This is very successful for us on Amazon and Google. For example, Philips is launching a brand new product which is very similar to ours, but we are on a lower price point, so we think there's an alternative for people that do not want to spend a certain basket value. So there's tactics you could use. And then hopefully if your brand is successful and money is flowing in, this is where you will be able to go into awareness, which is where you do a bit more branding activities, but which are obviously less ROI oriented on the short term, but which are contributing on growth on the long term. I'm saying this because it's important for any big brands out there. If you just do the purchase and consideration, you will struggle. You need to have the good balance between the two. And this is an example typically of the prioritization we do on our side. So if we're launching a D2C on a brand new market, what we do is we start with paid search. So maybe beyond Google, for example, or Bing or Yahoo, or local search engines. We focus first on protecting our brand and product keywords. And then if money allows, we go into what we call generic keywords. So for example, if we sell pants, we would go into more category-oriented keywords, like, for example, eco-responsible pants, recycled pants, this sort of thing. And then we would also overlay any retargeting or CRM audiences on top. So this would be number one priority. And then if you got budget sufficient left, then we go into paid social and display. And here we adapt the tactics. So for example, retargeting, number one priority for us, then we move into lookalike, and then we move into more interest, interest audiences. And then, for example, again, same logic, if budget allows, then you go into priority number one, which should be, for example, affiliation. Affiliation works very well for us for D2C. Maybe from influence marketing perspective or on cashback or coupons website as well. So this is an example. So this has to be fine-tuned for your shop based on your product, your consumer, etc., and your budget, but prioritization is definitely key. And then I'll finish up with that one slide, which is, again, a return on experience from us on 4 elements which are super important outside of the media and acquisition strategy. The first one is business seasonality and offers. So market seasonality is super important on any categories you will be upon, but also sometimes it can be surprising. So for example, we often hear about Black Friday and Cyber Monday. In a market like southwest of Europe for us today, Cyber Monday, also it's a big event, it only accounts for 8% of our yearly sales. So although there's definitely hype around it and a lot of shoppers are safeguarding this sort of date, for us the core of the business is actually done the rest of the year. Right, Q4, obviously, but like I mentioned earlier, super important to be on always-on approach sometimes. more than saying, I just want to be like for Black Friday. You're going to burn a lot of money and not necessarily convert very well on this period, which is super competitive.
Okay, interesting. Interesting to know. Yes, why you don't focus your efforts in one day. You focus your efforts in the rest of the year that brings the largest amount of revenue for your products.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And then the other element is stock, and stock can be also very challenging during this period like Black Friday. What we notice on our side is when the product is out of stock, you got pretty much one person out of two which is switching to another brand. So today, I think the consumer are more and more demanding in the excellence that you provide. Very few will wait for a restock, although you can propose to give your email address and be contacted when the stock gets back. But you need to have stocks, you need to have the right price, and you need to have the third point for me, which is the value proposition. It's what do you offer beyond just the price and the promotion? What makes your brand unique, but also what makes people to buy from your online shop? You offer free delivery, you provide advice. For example, what we do a lot on our side is advice on how to use the products, the recipes they can make with these products, emphasizing the eco-responsible aspects of our products. So we keep spare parts for 10 to 15 years. So you can repair your products. It's not an obsolete, planned obsolete sort of products we're selling. So these are, let's say, USPs that are important and are important to showcase to the consumer. And finally, we don't have time to spend too much time on it during this presentation, but it's a probably also less glamorous aspect, but the tracking, how you set up your activities, is paramount important. So how do you set up the right tracking of the consumer on your site or on your media campaigns? How do you know how long it's been staying on the page? When did it bounce from your site to understand where you can improve the customer experience on the site? This is let's say, the backbone before you start anything as well. So voila from my end.
Okay.
I hope it was useful.
It was a master class from direct to consumer acquisition. Yes, I think this is just the key point for anybody that wants to start working on this world of marketing. I think you cover very well. I feel like a small kid going to school now because believe me, this is a totally new world for me, and I didn't know that marketers manage so much data.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's actually a good point. It's when you were thinking of the metaphor that data is like oil, it needs to be refined, blah 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 blah. But it's true, it's bloody everywhere now. I see it in my jobs, in the way it's changed in 10 years as well. A marketer needs to be now super data driven compared to 10 years ago, I'd say.
Okay.
And with AI kicking in, it's.
I will ask the audience if they have any question. Do you have any concern, any question, or just you have to process all the information? Do you, Nikhil? No. I think I covered all of them for my curiosity. I have one. Yes, I have one curiosity just because I think you need. I know you need to go back to work, but what is the mood of the people when they have to react this fast in this fast pace on the minute, on the hour, on Black Friday, for instance? What is the mood of the people? How do they cope with all these busy days?
I think you would have to ask your students, probably. These are. It's from a consumer perspective. What I can say is that what we see a lot is, for example, people that are bookmarking, for example, certain products ahead of Black Friday.
Okay.
I'm giving this example because I used to work for Apple in London on the agency side, and the client I was working on, we were working for Black Friday, and typically what she was doing is 1 month before Black Friday, she was just safeguarding all the bookmarks of all the brands she loved and all the products she wanted to buy in 1 month's time. And she was saying, on the Black Friday day, I still have an hour and I just buy all the products.
Yeah.
So she was, and this is where I would assume that if you're planning to buy this product and then perhaps at the last minute you see another alternative offer, this is where I think it's interesting to see.
And what about on the side of the employees of the company, for instance?
Yeah, so we've had on our side we've had challenges the first few years to cope with the traffic uplift, for instance. So you need to have a strong infrastructure, I would say, not only to cope with the additional traffic, but also in the back end to manage the orders. So for us, again, on the supply chain side of things, it was very new because we were used to supply the product in a certain way, and during these events, there's just a lot of flowing information.
Kevin.
So I can't remember if the supply chain struggled, but I do think we had in 1 or 2 cases a complete breakdown for a few hours. Until supply chain teams could figure it out.
Okay, and then the last question, and then I promise I leave you. Yes, is what is the connection or your work and your relations between you and the people working in supply chain and logistics? How much important is supply chain and logistics in your business?
So I'd say that it's probably one of the main backbone before we started D2C. So, for example, in our organization, we've got a dedicated, what we call direct-to-consumer team. And these guys were sort of in charge of making sure we had the right setup when launching D2C. So these were a mixture of people that were commercially driven. So they were selecting the assortment, the product assortment that we were about to sell on the D2C shop. They had supply chain experts. They had also, sort of very also commercially driven with the relationship we have with retailers, and they are fully integrated with the supply chain within this direct-to-consumer team. So, for example, what we try to do more and more on our side from an advertising perspective is to cut off the advertising when we run out of stock for a given product. Sometimes it's automated with certain platforms. For example, Amazon, if you do any advertising with what we call sponsored brand or sponsored products, when your product runs out of stock, the campaign stops automatically. But in some, what we would call audience extension, which is when Amazon sells their data for us to target on, IMDb, for example, this is not the case. So we need to develop internally a dashboard which allows us to follow the stocks and to give this either to the people buying the campaign or to our agencies to be more active as well. Okay. So I know it doesn't answer fully your question, but you need definitely a super close relationship with the supply chain.
No, this is all connected now. We cannot see online business or e-commerce business without the supply chain and logistically.
Well, especially, for example, where we notice is let's imagine you sell a product and there's reshipping you provide. The consumer can send it back for 30 days. For us, we need to take this into consideration in the price point of the product. Because, for example, the first year we had a lot of shipments back, and this is, for example, going from Spain back to Brussels, where we have, for example, a supply chain like a warehouse, and the costs are not the same that if the warehouse was in the north of Spain, for instance. Yeah. So depending also on that, this needs to be accounted in your business plan.
Yeah, sure. You need to add a little bit of the insurance margin to every product that later acts like an insurance for all the refund or all the return for all the products. Smart. So, Florian, thank you very much for
You're welcome.
for your approach and for giving us this masterclass. So don't go away. I'm just going to end up the streaming, and then before the streaming, sorry, big knock to Florian. So here we don't clap. Here we knock on the. Here we knock on the table. We don't clap.